Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Boy GhostGG, and we are back with another Outer Worlds 2 IGN first. It is another one. I still got one more to go after this one. But how Fallout to New Vegas influenced the Outer Worlds 2 IGN first. This is almost 20 minutes long.
In our IGN first coverage on the Outer Worlds 2, we had exclusive looks at combat, its worlds, the wacky flaws system, and the new wild weapons. But here, we talk about design philosophy and how this...
Full transparency, I have never actually played Fallout New Vegas. Oh, no, that's not entirely true. I played like maybe less than an hour and then stopped. I just couldn't get into it. The mechanics of that game is very much of a mechanic that, like, when you were there, it was great. Going back, not so much, which is unfortunate because I hear it's a great game. I'm hoping Bethesda remasters that game how they did Oblivion. Honestly, that would be so dope. I would play it 100%. But yeah, I just couldn't get into it. I really couldn't because of the mechanic, the aiming mechanic just fucked me over.
Fully realized. And I did that with one of the pioneers of the genre.
And I know it's a great game. It's just like I just couldn't get into it.
Director Leonard Boyarsky, along with game director Brandon Adler. We go into things like story, factions, choice, and consequences evolving from the first game, but also how Obsidian looked back to Fallout New Vegas as a touchstone for the Outer Worlds 2. And we dig into what it means to be an RPG.
The first game, was really about setting up the universe. We really wanted to dig into the whole corporate, control of colonies, but that's not all there is to the universe. But we knew we wanted to start small because it was going to be a smaller game. To work up to a game like this, which is a much bigger game, we have different factions. We wanted to explore different elements of like society and the lore between the different colonies and the way societies are run differently, different colonies. This game takes place in a different colony than the first one. So for the Outer Worlds 2, we wanted to expand what we did on the Outer Worlds 1. When we started the Outer Worlds 1, we knew we had a limited time, limited budget, so we kind of went back to our roots and said, okay, we're going to establish a universe here. We're going to really explore the corporate side of this universe. Corporations are really big, powerful force all across the galaxy in the Outer Worlds, but other colonies are set up differently than Halcyon was in the first one. So we always knew that we wanted to go bigger on this second game, and we wanted to explore different facets of the societies in the Outer Worlds. So in this game, we've brought in the Protectorate, which is a dictatorship that brainwashes its citizens. They call them subjects. And it's all about, the greater good. It's all about sacrificing for your neighbor, but it's also about sacrificing any kind of freedom or any kind of individuality for a place in this luxurious society. Then they also had a version of the Order of Scientific Inquiry from the first game that was called the Order of the Ascendant. They were the state religion, and they split off at a certain point, like 3 years before the game starts, which coincided incidentally with Anti's Choice, which is a merger between Anti-Cleo and Spacer's Choice, invading this colony. So in this game, we're really exploring a lot of different, not only types of governing or philosophies behind how you govern people, but also, the differences between them. And it all goes back to like what was one of our things in the base game, which was anyone who controls the story that you tell yourself about your life is in control of your life. And so it's how these different factions kind of like tell their people what they need to do to be good citizens.
Had some interesting theories about man's perception of reality that I thought could be applied to our attempts to decipher the plan.
Very early on, before the first game even shipped, we were kind of looking at places that we knew we wanted to punch up for the sequel. We did a lot of user research and really came back with, things like larger environments, a lot more to explore, more dynamic combat, obviously leaning heavier into the RPG stuff because people were like, hey, we want more crunchier RPG. So we spent a lot of time focusing on that as well. So, Leonard was kind of talking about like the story and setting aspects, but also from the systemic side, like we really kind of targeted what people were really asking for.
Yeah, reactivity was a huge part of that as well. In the games we've made in the past, and even in the base game, we really tried to hit the reactivity, but we knew we had to go smaller. Like with a lot of the aspects of this game, we tried to just go much deeper and much bigger with it. So story-wise for the Outer Worlds 2, we really wanted to delve deeper into the same things we were exploring in the first game theme-wise. But one of the things that we really wanted to hit as well as just thematically was like the humor. In base game, it really was all about
I really like the humor in the first game.
We love that kind of humor, but we thought we wanted to go exploring different types of humor based on these different factions as well. Like I already said, it really goes down to, or gets down to like how people control other people, how the people in power are going to control people with less power. So it was just different flavors of that. We really wanted to kind of dig into, you know, the arguments people use for this is what a good life is. This is how you be a good person. And there's a lot to mine there.
Oh, and Val's been stalling less since I patched her acclimator. Ship doesn't smell anymore. That's about it.
Story-wise, we definitely, you know, wanted to hit a great adventure story. You're an Earth Directorate agent to come to this colony to try to deal with the problems that are going on there. So there's a little bit of that aspect too. You're an outsider as usual in our games. So just like really kind of like wrap all this thematic deep storytelling in more of an adventure story as well.
One of the main themes also that we were kind of looking at pretty early on was what does it mean to have like a cascading failure in like a utopia? Because the Protectorate, for all of its bad things, it also, they had a lot of luxuries. Things went really well and worked really well for them for a long time. And so we constantly explore that in our content of like, all right, if you take those pieces out of that Jenga tower, like how does this fall apart and what does that actually mean for everything that's going around? And so that actually drives a lot of the content that we make as well, looking into that.
When we set out to create these games, we don't try to reflect the day-to-day or reality of the existence that people are going through now. And one of the reasons for that is because we want it to be more universal. The things we're dealing with now in the real world are just variations on things that have been going on since basically the beginning of society. So we like to make more timeless things that have to do with the bigger questions, as opposed to what's the current flavor of how this thing is being done right now. That will keep them hopefully, you know, people be able to play them 15, 20 years from now and still feel like timeless and still feel like something that they can like, connect to and not really feel like a product of 2025. As far as the Fallout New Vegas' influence on this game, I think it comes from the common history that we all share, or most of the people share who started this company, and Brandon and people like Matt who have worked here for a long time. You know, we started the Fallout series way back in Interplay back in 1997, and this is just kind of like an extension of that. And I think New Vegas was a great, you know, entry in that series, and they really kind of hit a lot of the stuff we always like to hit in terms of the depth, in terms of the reactivity, in terms of the moral choices and the gray area and that kind of thing. And so we were always thinking like that's definitely a touchstone for us because they did such a good job with it. I had previously done only one first-person game, which was Vampire Bloodlines, and we kind of explored some of that stuff there too, but that's a very different world than the Fallout world. And when we started the base game, we really wanted to explore a lot of the same stuff that we did in the Fallouts. One of the reasons that we decided some of the stuff early on in this game that we did, or in this series that we did, is because we didn't know what we were doing when we first made Fallout. And it was like, oh, this would be really cool. And then in Fallout 2, we're like, okay, let's bring society ahead 80 years. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we're right up against the edge of it still being a Fallout world because it's going to move out of being post-apocalyptic. And so then when we started this game and started looking at the lore and the background we wanted to do here, we wanted to set up something where it's like, I can go to a whole bunch of different places and have a whole bunch of different situations and not be locked into that. And I feel like New Vegas did a really good job of kind of like finding different flavors or different things you could say about what was going on in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. So that was just something where it's just like, let's give ourselves a much bigger playground this time.
Again, early on when we were kind of talking about this stuff and really looking at New Vegas as one of the touchstones that we were kind of building off of, we looked at things like having more omnipresent factions that were larger. It was something that we didn't really do in the Outer Worlds 1 for various reasons. And so we're like, yeah, we really want to explore that, and what would that be, right? That, again, harkens back to NCR and Caesar's Legion fighting over some core main thing. And so we have a lot of that same kind of thing. Obviously, a lot of our systems lean very heavily into character build, not only skills, but the perks you have, and your background, and the traits you take, and the equipment you have. New Vegas did the exact same thing. Even something simple as like the pacing of the different points of interest around the world and how often you run into things took a lot of inspiration from Fallout New Vegas. When we were looking at companions that we loved, we looked at folks like Boone. You know, we were like, man, we love that character. We love that character. It's very iconic for these good reasons. Like, let's make sure our characters hit that same stride. And so I'd say that we took a lot from that and then put our spin on it for the Outer Worlds.
We really wanted to dig a lot deeper into the RPG elements for the Outer Worlds 2 than we did on the Outer Worlds 1. And a lot of that just really had to do with our time and our resources on the first game. Our challenge there was like, how are we going to make a game with the constraints we have and really kind of get that RPG feel without ending up with a game that's unfinished or unpolished? So that was definitely a driving force then. And we were working with a brand new team. There's all these kind of constraints that we had to work within. And so we took that as a challenge to that game. And we, even from the very beginning, we knew it was going to be shorter than most of our games. We knew it was going to be a little bit lighter on some of that stuff. But, you know, we really, really wanted a solid start to the series. So we really, you know, focused in on that stuff to make sure we could land it. This time around, we really wanted to dig in the stuff we really enjoy, which is getting way deep with the reactivity. All the games I've worked on or I've tried, you know, in the past that I've worked on, that's like a key thing for them. It's like the fact that the player is choosing what their game is. Even more than, you know, the story we want to tell. It's like the game you're going to play or the story you're going to tell as a player of that game. We want you to be able to like approach the game any way you want and make choices that are going to feel reactive to you and feel like you're making a change in this world. And that's like a really core component of Obsidian games. We had to go a little bit lighter on that, but hopefully there was still some of that in the base game. But this game, we really wanted to kind of like go back to our roots and really do it right.
Well, that's great. I love Obsidian games.
Choice and consequences
I
in
love
Outer
playing
Worlds
games where you can make
2
choices and
some interesting
the
ways
world changes
because
around you, you know?
We knew one of the big problems we've had in the past in RPGs, and this is going back a long time, is the better we are at the game reacting to your choices, sometimes the more it seems like that's what was supposed to happen. Because unless I've played it 2 or 3 times, I'm not like quite sure that it could have gone any other way. It just seems like, oh, this is, you know, this is kind of like the plot line. We always tried to do things like have people reference things that you have done and things like that. But there was a lot of times where you couldn't do that, or it's just, you know, these conversations get very complex. So we've always kind of struggled with that a little bit. And one of the ways we've dealt with that in the Outer Worlds 2 that I think has been very successful is we show you choices you can't make yet, that like maybe you want to leave the conversation and go do a little bit more research, exploration, talk to different people, get more information than you currently have. We could also hover over lines you've missed and you kind of see the category of the things. Oh, is this a quest I haven't done yet that would affect this conversation? Or if I am getting certain choices, you can hover over them and see why you're getting those choices to a large degree. I mean, there's, besides your skills, besides your backgrounds, besides all that kind of stuff, the traits, there's a lot of stuff based on your choices, and we really wanted to kind of reinforce why you were getting those options when you were getting those options. Because it's a psychological thing too, that it really helps feel like you're driving the game even more, at least in my opinion. That's how I found it. There's a lot of contention between letting the player know all this information and actually developing an organic story. That's one of the biggest challenges we have when we're writing this game is like, this has to sound like a conversation. Even though you are running down a laundry list of things, you got to make it feel like it's reactive. And that becomes very, very tricky when you're like, oh, 15 different paths are going to converge on this one node. But make it sound conversational. Don't, you know, make it sound like it's going to work in all these different things. And then on top of that, we have VO that we're doing, so we have to kind of track all that stuff very carefully. It's a complex and not easy problem to solve. I feel like we've done a good job this time. We'll have to wait and see what people think.
I've seen few firsthand, but that isn't because they've gone. Rather, I believe they have become visibility deficient.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting as a difference in the reactivity between Outer Worlds 1 and Outer Worlds 2 is I've noticed a lot more longer-term reactivity, so things that you've done earlier in the game being referenced later on and having a larger impact. Not that that didn't happen in the Outer Worlds 1, there was some of that, but we've really been looking for ways in which we can kind of really expand upon that, have more of that. And again, I think part of having like the factions be omnipresent throughout the game helps a lot of those things, because we can really reference a lot of the stuff from earlier on to really affect those long-term arcs for those factions.
The way we approach branching or different choices and things of that nature is again, we always go back to the player experience. So a lot of this actually comes from playtesting too, or having people play the game who aren't as familiar with it. Because you'll have somebody play it and go like, I have this perk and I really wanted to use it in this place. We're like, oh, we'll write that down and we'll do it. You know, we'll put it into the game. Because that's what we're trying to do is really cater to that. You know, and I mentioned a few minutes ago about how you can have all these branches like go into one point, so we have to make it feel conversational. There's always like, where are we gonna spread this stuff out? Like, how are we gonna control this being human beings that have to get this done in a very specific amount of time? How are we gonna let players like have things that go off in different directions? How do you handle that? Where do we cut off the player choices? So there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of like putting it into the game, having people play it, getting their feedback, what they thought was going on. Did it feel like it was too different? Was it too disjointed? And there's a lot of that back and forth in terms of us reacting to people playing the game and giving us that kind of feedback. One of the interesting things about the way we approach this game is it really fits well with how Obsidian likes to make sequels, and that's like you don't have to play the first game to enjoy the second one. As part of like just the lore of this world, just the way we want to build out this world, we really wanted totally different scenarios that we could build up. You know, we didn't want to have always have the same factions. We wanted to be able to explore different facets of this world, which gives us the ability to kind of like almost start from scratch. If you've played the first game, there's going to be a lot of really cool callbacks to it. There's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that you recognize and things that really resonate with you. But if you come in from scratch, you're still having to explore this new colony and figure out things which, you know, if you played the first one, you might still have to be figuring out. And this also partially comes from something that we accidentally stumbled on way back in Fallout 1, which was if you're an outsider and you don't know what's going on as a character in the game, that matches the player experience very closely. And so that's kind of one of these things that we've continued to kind of like bring to all of our games that we've done, or at least all the games I've worked on, is like have that kind of outsider player coming to a new area at the very least, so they don't know what's happening, so they have to explore it too, because it's kind of weird to a certain degree if your player should know all of this stuff, but they're having to ask the questions that you would want to ask as a player.
One of the things that I think RPGs are doing really well right now, and even getting better at, is they're just becoming much more cinematic. And I think that's cool. I think that really helps tell the story. It makes it like a lot more impactful. You know, some of the things we're doing in the Outer Worlds too, in terms of maybe things that I would love to see more of, is again leaning into a lot more of like the player agency and the player build stuff. Like, because to me, like that's just such an important part of what an RPG is, right? Like you're building.
All right, so I'm gonna skip through a little bit of this here. I think we got the gist of it.
RPGs.
It's Obsidian story. The first game, they had a limited budget and whatnot, so they couldn't go like what they really wanted as an Obsidian game to go for. But they changed that for this one. It's a lot more like their older Fallout games and whatnot, where like the choices matter. The world shapes around you. People mention your feats and whatnot that you've accomplished in the world, whether they're positive or negative. It's an RPG. It's a true RPG, I guess you could say. And yeah, they also mentioned in the beginning, like we play as some sort of government figure that's coming into this colony to get things in order, fix whatever is going wrong, and from there we meet our crew. We have a ship and all that, and yeah, sounds good to me. Everything I'm hearing about this game, every time I watch one of these, I just want to play it, and I hope I get to do that soon. But yeah, that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.